I walked into my room. The alien woman smiled and said, "Come to bed." Human Alex had been on the spaceship for what felt like forever. The long hours of work, the constant meetings, and the endless discussions had left him drained. He was a part of an intergalactic mission, and while the journey was thrilling at first, the excitement had slowly faded. The corridors of the spaceship now felt cold, and the hum of machinery that used to comfort him now only reminded him of the distance between him and everything familiar. Today had been particularly exhausting. The crew had been in high-stakes discussions about the future of humanity in the galaxy. Talks with alien races, plans for potential cooperation, and the constant pressure to prove humanity's worth in the universe left Alex feeling more isolated than ever. After the final meeting of the day, Alex couldn't wait to return to his quarters. The metallic door of his room opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from a small lamp in the corner that flickered weakly. It was quiet, and for a moment, Alex was grateful for the peace. He kicked off his boots, unzipped his uniform, and sighed deeply as he sank onto the bed. But something was off. He hadn't expected anyone to be in his room. As he turned to face the small table by the window, he froze. There, standing as if she had always been there, was a woman. She was tall, with skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Her eyes were the color of the deepest violets, shining with an intensity that made Alex's heart race. Her presence was calm, almost ethereal, and yet there was something about her that felt entirely real. For a moment, Alex wondered if he was dreaming. He had been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on his mind. But no, this woman was real. She was standing there watching him, and there was a smile on her lips that seemed to both reassure and unsettle him at the same time. "Come to bed, human," she said in a soft voice, as if she had been waiting for him to arrive. Alex blinked, trying to make sense of what was happening. "What?" "Who are you?" His voice was shaky, the words barely forming as his mind tried to catch up with the bizarre situation unfolding in front of him. The woman's smile widened, but it wasn't a smile of malice. It was inviting. Her voice carried a strange confidence, but there was no threat in it. "I am Calera," she said, stepping forward with a graceful, almost floating movement. "I've been waiting for you, Alex." Alex's heart skipped a beat as she spoke his name. He had never seen her before in his life. How did she know who he was? He tried to remember if anyone had mentioned an alien emissary, someone who would be waiting for him in his room, but his mind was blank. "Why? Why are you here?" he asked, his voice still uncertain, though curiosity was beginning to replace his confusion. Calera didn't answer directly. Instead, she took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "I am here to offer you something, Alex. Something beyond what you can imagine." She tilted her head, her expression soft but filled with an intensity that made Alex's breath catch in his throat. Alex stood frozen, unsure of what to say or do. His mind raced, trying to come up with a logical explanation for her presence. She was beautiful, certainly, but her presence was almost too perfect, too otherworldly. What was she? What did she want? "I don't understand," Alex finally managed to say, his voice still hesitant. Calera seemed to sense his discomfort. She raised her hand, a gentle gesture, and the warmth in her voice grew. "You don't need to understand everything right now, but there is something I need from you, Alex, something that only you can give." Her words were like a puzzle Alex couldn't solve. His heart raced, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was standing on the edge of something unknown. There was a weight to her presence, a gravity that pulled at him, making it impossible to look away from her eyes. The silence between them stretched on for a moment, heavy with unspoken questions. Alex finally took a tentative step forward. "What do you need from me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Calera smiled again, and this time there was something warmer, more knowing about it. "All in good time," she said softly, "but for now just rest. Let the world outside fade away and let yourself be at peace." She motioned to the bed where Alex had been moments ago, inviting him once more. "Come to bed, human." Alex's confusion deepened. Everything inside him told him to be cautious, to question her more, to demand answers. But there was something about her, something in the way she spoke, that made him feel at ease. A strange, calming energy surrounded her, as if she were not just a visitor in his room, but a part of his very being. It was both unsettling and comforting at the same time. He hesitated for a moment longer, then let out a breath. I don't know what's happening here, he said slowly, but I'll listen. Kalera's smile softened, and she nodded as though she had expected nothing less. That's all I ask for now. Come, let me show you what you need to see. Alex wasn't sure what he had agreed to, but in that moment he felt something inside him stir. A curiosity, a longing, something that had been buried deep within him for a long time. And though he didn't understand it, he followed her lead. As he took the first step toward the bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this encounter, would change everything. The world outside, with its endless noise and struggles, seemed to fade into the background. For the first time in a long while, Alex felt a strange peace settle over him. Kalera's presence was undeniable, and as he sat down on the bed beside her, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of journey this strange, glowing alien woman had just begun to lead him on. But for now, he was content to listen and to wait, knowing that the answers would come in time. The room was quiet now, save for the soft hum of the spaceship's engines in the distance. Alex sat on the bed, still trying to process everything that had just happened. Kalera was sitting next to him, her glowing presence a stark contrast to the dim light of the room. She hadn't said much since inviting him to rest, but her gaze never left him. It was as if she was waiting for him to make the next move, to ask the next question. Alex, still feeling a mix of confusion and curiosity, couldn't help but stare at her. She was unlike anything he had ever seen, so beautiful yet so distant. Her violet eyes seemed to hold secrets, stories of far-off galaxies and unknown civilizations. There was something about her, something both inviting and mysterious, that drew him in. He wasn't sure what he was feeling, fear, fascination, or something else entirely. But whatever it was enough to keep him sitting there, on the edge of the bed, trying to find his words. Kalera didn't seem bothered by the silence. Instead, she gave him a soft smile, one that conveyed both patience and understanding. Her voice, when she spoke again, was calm, almost soothing. "You have many questions, Alex. I can see them in your eyes." Alex was taken aback. It was true. He had so many questions, but they all seemed too overwhelming to voice. Where was he even supposed to start? How could he begin to understand what was happening? "I don't even know what to ask," he admitted, feeling a bit vulnerable. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know why you're here or what you want from me." Kalera's smile widened, though it was still gentle. "I understand. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? You didn't expect to find me in your room tonight, did you?" Alex shook his head. "No, this is all so strange. I didn't think I'd ever meet someone like you." Her gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his. The touch was warm, reassuring. "I know this is unexpected, Alex, but it is important. You are important." Alex blinked at her, trying to make sense of her words. "I'm just a human. I'm no different from the others here." "You are different," Kalera said, her voice firm but still kind. "You are special, Alex. You have qualities that the others do not. That is why I'm here." He looked at her, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" "I'm just one of many." Kalera's eyes gleamed with something deeper, something ancient. "You see, humanity is being watched. There are many races across the galaxy, and they are all waiting to see what you will do. Will you survive? Will you thrive? Will you show your true strength?" Alex frowned, trying to make sense of her words. "But we're just starting to explore space. We're not even close to being a major player in the galaxy. We're so small." Kalera nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Yes, you are small now. But not for long. You are on the edge of something great, something powerful. And you, Alex, will play a role in what happens next. That is why I am here. I need to know if you have what it takes to lead, to guide your people when the time comes." The weight of her words settled on his shoulders. He could feel the gravity of what she was saying, even though he didn't fully understand it. "Lead? I don't even know how to lead. I'm just a crew member, just someone doing my job." Kalera's smile was reassuring. "You may not realize it now, but leadership is not about power or titles. It's about how you respond to the challenges before you. It's about how you face fear, how you stand in the face of uncertainty and rise above it. That is what true leadership is." Alex looked away, feeling a strange mix of doubt and desire. He had never thought of himself as a leader. He had always been content to follow orders, to do his part, and to blend into the background. But now, with Kalera sitting beside him, speaking in these calm, confident tones, he felt a flicker of something inside him. Something he hadn't noticed before, something that made him want to be more, to do more. Kalera must have sensed his internal struggle because she continued, her voice soft but insistent. You have within you the ability to lead, Alex. I see it in your heart. But it will take more than just your willpower. You will need to be tested, and that test will come soon. Alex turned to face her, his curiosity now fully awakened. Tested by who? By the forces watching you, Calera replied, her tone growing serious. There are factions, alien races that are observing humanity from afar. They are deciding your future, your survival. Your place in the galaxy. Wait, what? Alex's voice rose slightly in disbelief. We're being watched by who? Why? Calera's eyes locked with his, a deep, knowing look in her gaze. There are many races out there. Some of them wish to see humanity succeed, while others wish to see you fail. The test will be a trial, a challenge that will determine whether humanity can survive and join the larger galactic community. It will be a test of strength, of intelligence, and of unity. Alex's mind spun. He had never imagined anything like this. The idea of being tested, of humanity's future being judged by alien races, was something straight out of a science fiction novel. And yet, here he was, sitting in his room with an alien woman who was telling him that the fate of his species hung in the balance. But why me? He asked, feeling a growing sense of urgency. Why are you telling me this? I'm not important. I'm just a regular guy. Calera's smile softened. You are important, Alex. You don't have to be the strongest or the smartest to make a difference. You just have to be willing to act when the time comes. That is why I am here, to help you see your potential, to help you see what lies within you. Alex felt his chest tighten. There was a sense of responsibility building inside him, a weight that he didn't know how to bear. He had always been someone who followed orders, someone who blended into the background. But now, Calera was telling him that he had a role to play in something much larger than himself. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could speak, Calera stood up, her gaze fixed on him with a quiet intensity. The time is near, Alex. Soon you will face the test. But before that happens, I need you to understand one thing. This is not just about survival. It's about what you will do with the power that you are given. It's about how you will lead when others look to you for guidance. Alex stood up as well, his mind racing. He felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted, as if his entire world had been turned upside down. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was on the brink of something that he couldn't yet comprehend, something huge. Are you ready? Calera asked, her voice low and steady. Alex took a deep breath. He didn't know if he was ready. But he knew that whatever was coming, he had to face it, for himself, for humanity. I'm ready, he said, his voice stronger than he felt. Calera nodded, her expression proud. Good, the first step has already been taken. Now we wait, and when the time comes, you will be ready. As she spoke, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet understand. But one thing was clear. He was no longer just a passenger on this journey. He was a part of something much bigger than himself. And the road ahead would test him in ways he never imagined. The days that followed were filled with silence and contemplation. Alex spent his time trying to process everything Calera had told him. His mind swirled with thoughts of the test, the galactic races watching humanity, and the responsibility that seemed to suddenly rest on his shoulders. He had always thought of himself as just another crew member on a spaceship, another small part of a much larger machine. But now he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to play a much larger role. Calera had told him that soon the test would come. But what did that mean? What was the test, and how would he be ready for it? Every time he thought he understood, more questions seemed to arise. He wanted answers, but Calera remained elusive, not giving him any clear direction. Instead, she seemed to be watching him, observing how he would respond, waiting for him to figure things out on his own. As the days passed, Alex couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she had looked at him, the confidence in her voice, it was as if she knew something he didn't, something important. And the way she spoke about his potential, about humanity's potential, made him question everything he had ever known. How could he be ready for something as big as this? He wasn't a leader. He was just a man doing his job. He spent hours in his room, staring at the walls, trying to quiet the storm of thoughts in his mind. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would change everything. It was late one evening when Calera finally appeared again. She stepped into his room without knocking, her presence filling the space as always. This time, she didn't smile. Her expression was serious, and there was a look in her eyes that made Alex's heart skip a beat. It's time, she said simply, her voice low and steady. Alex felt a sudden rush of anxiety. He had been expecting this moment, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure if he was ready. He stood up, his palms sweating, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kalara walked towards him, her steps quiet but purposeful. "The test is not something that can be prepared for," she said. "It will come when you least expect it, and it will challenge everything you believe. But you will know when it happens. Trust yourself and trust that you are ready." Alex swallowed hard. He wanted to ask more questions to understand exactly what she meant. But he knew that it wouldn't help. He had to face this challenge on his own. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice still shaky. "We are going to the observation deck," Kalara replied. "There you will find what you need to begin." Alex nodded, trying to steady his nerves. The two of them walked in silence through the corridors of the ship, the only sound the soft hum of the engines beneath their feet. The atmosphere felt tense, as if the very air was thick with anticipation. When they reached the observation deck, Kalara stopped in front of the large window that looked out into the vastness of space. Alex stood beside her, staring out at the stars. It was beautiful in a way that almost took his breath away. The stars were so distant, so unreachable. And yet here he was, standing at the edge of the galaxy, facing an unknown future. Kalara turned to him, her eyes intense. "This is where it begins, Alex," she said softly. "The test will come from here, from the void, but you must be ready to face it." Alex turned to face her, his mind racing. "What do I have to do?" he asked again, his voice rising with urgency. Kalara's gaze softened, but there was no smile. "You have to choose," she said. "This is not just a test of strength or intelligence, it is a test of your character. You will have to decide who you are and what you stand for. There is no right or wrong answer, only the one you choose." The words hit him harder than he expected. He had always thought of himself as someone who followed orders, someone who did what he was told without question. But now, for the first time in his life, he was being asked to choose who he really was. It was terrifying. What if he made the wrong choice? What if he wasn't strong enough, or smart enough, or brave enough? Kalara seemed to sense his doubt. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch comforting yet firm. "Don't worry, Alex," she said. "The choice is yours to make, but you must trust yourself. You are stronger than you know." Alex looked at her, feeling a mix of emotions: fear, confusion, and for the first time, hope. He didn't know if he was ready for this, but something deep inside him told him that he had to try. He had to face whatever was coming, no matter how hard it might be. He took a deep breath and turned back to the window. The stars outside seemed to shimmer with possibilities, each one a potential path, a future that he could walk if he was willing to take the first step. "All right," he said, his voice more steady now. "I'll do it. I'll face whatever comes next." Kalara's expression softened, and she gave him a small, approving nod. "Good, you've made the right choice." And then, as if on cue, the ship shuddered. A loud, low rumble echoed through the corridors, and the lights flickered. Alex's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The test was beginning. The ground beneath him seemed to shift as the ship's systems came to life. Alarms blared, and a voice came over the intercom, but it was too distorted to make out. Kalara didn't seem worried. She was calm, almost serene. "This is the moment, Alex," she said, her voice a quiet anchor in the chaos around them. "This is your test. Trust yourself and you will succeed." Alex nodded, his pulse racing as he braced himself for whatever came next. He didn't know what the test would be, but he knew that he had to face it. There was no turning back now. He had made his choice, and whatever happened, he would see it through. The ship continued to shudder, and the alarms grew louder. Kalara's eyes met his, and for the first time, Alex felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just a crew member anymore. He was part of something much larger, something that would change the course of humanity's future. "Are you ready?" Kalara asked again, her voice calm but filled with expectation. Alex took one last deep breath, his mind clear. "I'm ready," he said, his voice firm. The chaos of the ship's sudden shuddering slowly began to settle. The alarms blared louder and louder, a persistent sound that echoed through the metal walls. Alex's heart raced as he felt the tremors of the ship beneath his feet. He glanced at Kalara, who stood beside him, unmoved by the turmoil around them. Her calmness only heightened Alex's sense of urgency. He wasn't sure what was happening, but something told him that this was part of the test she had spoken about. Kalara turned to face him, her violet eyes locked onto his with an intensity that both reassured and unnerved him. "This is the beginning," she said, her voice as calm as ever. You must be prepared for what comes next. The test is not what you expect. It will challenge you, but you must trust yourself. Alex swallowed hard. He wanted to ask what was happening, what they were supposed to do, but no words seemed to come. Instead, he focused on his breathing, trying to calm his nerves. The ship's shaking continued, though the lights had stabilized somewhat. There was a steady hum now, a different tone that seemed to pulse through the ship's walls. Suddenly, the loudspeaker crackled and the captain's voice echoed through the intercom system. "Attention all crew members, we are under attack. I repeat, the ship is under attack. All personnel report to your stations immediately." Alex's pulse quickened. The message was clear. This wasn't just an emergency drill. This was real. His mind raced. What was going on? Why now? The words from Calera echoed in his mind. The test is coming. Without thinking, Alex turned to Calera. "What do we do? How do we respond to this?" She gave him a look that seemed to contain both reassurance and a quiet challenge. "You are not alone in this, Alex," she said, "but the choice of how you respond lies with you." Before Alex could respond, the ship lurched again and the lights flickered briefly. A loud crash sounded somewhere in the distance, followed by more alarm sirens. The atmosphere on the ship grew heavier, and Alex could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. But Calera's calmness remained, and it seemed to anchor him, keeping him from being overwhelmed by the panic that was starting to spread throughout the crew. He turned toward the door. "I need to go. The crew—" Calera placed a gentle hand on his arm, stopping him. "No. You must stay. The test has already begun. It is not about what happens out there," she said softly, her eyes never leaving his. "It is about how you face what's within you." Alex didn't fully understand her words, but there was no time to question them. The crew needed help, and he couldn't just stand by while they were in danger. He took a step forward, ready to leave the room and join his fellow crew members when Calera stopped him once again. "Alex," she said firmly, her voice steady, "the test is not about fighting. It's about choice. This is your moment. This is when you decide who you are and what you stand for." Alex hesitated. Her words were cryptic, but there was something undeniable in her gaze that made him stop. He turned back to her, looking for some sign, some indication of what he was supposed to do. But there was only calmness, only a deep understanding in her eyes that made him feel more uncertain than ever. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "The ship is under attack. People are in danger. I can't just stand here doing nothing." "You are not doing nothing, Alex," Calera said, her voice firm but not unkind. "You are standing in the face of your own fear, and that is the test. Fear." Alex had never thought of himself as someone who was afraid. He had been trained for missions, for emergencies, for situations like this. But the truth was, he was scared. The ship was under attack. The lives of his fellow crew members were at risk. And in that moment, the weight of the responsibility was almost too much to bear. He didn't know if he was strong enough for this. But Calera's words echoed in his mind, and he found himself looking deep within. This was the test. The choice wasn't about reacting to the chaos around him, but how he handled the fear inside himself. He had always been someone who followed orders, who reacted to situations rather than controlled them. But now, Calera was telling him to make a choice. To choose how he would respond, not just with his actions, but with his heart. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. He could hear the voices of the crew outside, the panic starting to rise as the situation escalated. The decision was his. He could rush out there, join the others, try to fight, try to save everyone, or he could do something else, something that Calera was trying to teach him. "Are you ready?" she asked, her eyes watching him closely. Alex looked at her, taking a moment to calm himself. "I'm ready," he said finally, though he didn't feel completely certain. But something inside him told him that this was the only way forward. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He wasn't just a crew member. He was a person, and this was his chance to define who he was. Calera nodded slowly, her gaze softening with approval. "Good, now go." With that, Alex turned toward the door again. He knew what he had to do. He didn't have all the answers, but he could make this choice. He could face his fear. He could lead. And he would not let the chaos of the world around him drown him. As he stepped into the hallway, the chaos outside grew louder, more urgent. Crew members ran past him, shouting orders, trying to maintain control of the situation. The ship was under attack, and there was no time to waste. Alex moved quickly through the corridors, his mind focused, his resolve solidifying with each step. He couldn't afford to be afraid anymore. The control room was just ahead. He could hear the crew members inside, their voices a mixture of panic and determination. As he reached the door, he paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. This was it. This was his moment, his test. With a quick glance at the door, he stepped inside. The room was filled with the hum of machinery and the glow of computer screens. The crew looked up at him, their faces tense with fear and worry. The captain, who had been speaking over the intercom earlier, was standing at the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Alex," she said, her voice strained. "We need all hands on deck. The ship is under attack. We're losing power in the aft section. We need to get the shields back online before it's too late." Alex nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. This was his chance to prove that he was more than just a bystander. He stepped forward, his mind clear, his fear now pushed aside. "We'll get it done," Alex said, his voice steady, his words a promise. The captain looked at him, and for the first time he saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She turned back to the console, barking orders to the crew. Alex joined her at the panel, his hands moving quickly over the buttons, his focus sharp. The test was no longer something abstract, something distant. It was right here in front of him, and he was ready. Calera had been right. The test wasn't about reacting to the world around him. It was about how he chose to face it. And in that moment, Alex knew that he was ready for whatever came next. The sound of alarms had become a constant companion, their shrill warnings echoing through the ship's corridors. But Alex barely noticed them anymore. His focus was locked on the control panel in front of him, his fingers moving quickly over the buttons as he worked to restore power to the ship's failing systems. The tension in the control room was palpable, the air thick with fear and determination. Crew members rushed past him, trying to repair broken systems and keep the ship from falling apart. Alex could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was his test. This was what Calera had warned him about. He had chosen this path, and now there was no turning back. The stakes were higher than ever. The ship was under attack, the crew was depending on him, and humanity's future might rest on what he did next. He glanced up at the captain, who was standing near the communications console, barking orders to the rest of the crew. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. But there was something else in her eyes now, something different from before. There was trust in him. "Alex," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "we've lost contact with the rest of the fleet. If we don't get those shields back online soon, we'll be sitting ducks." Alex didn't need to hear more. He could feel the urgency in her words, the desperation in the air. The ship's systems were on the brink of failure, and every second counted. He knew what he had to do. He took a deep breath and moved to the shield control panel, his hands steady despite the pressure. As he worked, his mind raced. This wasn't just about fixing a ship. It wasn't just about technology or systems or even survival. This was about leadership. This was about taking responsibility, not just for his own life, but for the lives of the entire crew and, in some strange way, the future of humanity. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands never wavered. He couldn't afford to let fear take control now. Calera's words echoed in his mind. "The test is not about fighting, it's about choice." She had been right. The choice was his. He could have run from this, let the fear take over, let someone else make the tough decisions. But he had chosen to face it. He had chosen to lead. The console in front of him blinked red, the lights flashing urgently. He knew what that meant. The shields were failing. One more failure and the ship would be vulnerable to attack. He punched in the final sequence of commands, holding his breath as the system hummed to life. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly the lights flickered and the control panel turned green. The shields were back online. Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The ship wasn't safe yet, but they had bought themselves time. The crew members around him paused, their eyes flickering toward him, then back to their stations. There was a brief moment of silence, and in that moment Alex felt a sense of accomplishment, small but significant. The captain looked over at him, her face tired but filled with relief. "Good work, Alex. We've got the shields back, but this isn't over. We've still got work to do." Alex nodded, his mind already shifting to the next task. He didn't have time to dwell on the victory. The battle wasn't won yet, but something had shifted inside him. He wasn't just following orders anymore. He was making decisions, taking action, and leading when it mattered most. The comms crackled again, and a new voice filled the room. "Captain, we've detected incoming enemy ships. They're closing in fast." The room erupted into motion as the crew scrambled to prepare for the next wave. Alex turned back to the captain. "What do we need to do?" "Prepare the weapon systems," the captain replied, her tone no longer trembling. It was firm, resolute. She was leading now, and Alex could feel the shift in her confidence. "We're going to make them regret attacking us." Alex didn't hesitate. "I'm with you," he said, his voice steady. He moved quickly to the weapons console, his hands working as if on instinct. His mind was clear now, the earlier confusion replaced by a single, unshakable purpose. This was what he had trained for. This was what he had chosen to do. As he activated the weapon systems, Alex felt a surge of adrenaline. The situation was dire, but for the first time in a long while, he felt in control. The fear that had gripped him earlier was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was a part of him now, something he could use to stay sharp, to stay focused. The test wasn't just about surviving, it was about proving that he could rise to the challenge. The ship shuddered again as enemy fire began to hit the shields. The lights flickered and the room trembled with each blast. Alex's fingers moved quickly, adjusting the weapon's targeting system. He could hear the captain giving orders, coordinating the crew, but his focus was entirely on the task at hand. There was no room for distraction. No time for hesitation. The first enemy ship appeared on the screen. It was massive, its dark hull looming in space like a predator. Alex's breath caught in his throat, but he didn't let the fear take hold. He adjusted the targeting system, locking onto the enemy ship. "Firing," he said aloud, his voice calm. The ship's weapons fired, the energy blast streaking through space toward the enemy vessel. Alex watched as the beams hit the target, a bright flash filling the screen as the enemy ship took the blow. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but it was enough to slow it down. "We've got more incoming," the captain said, her voice tense. "Prepare for another round." Alex's hands moved faster now, his mind fully engaged. He wasn't just reacting anymore, he was in command. He was leading, just as Kalara had said. The fear was still there, lurking in the background, but it was no longer something that held him back. It was something he could use to fuel his focus, to sharpen his instincts. He fired again and again, watching as each shot landed with precision. The enemy ships were no match for the crew's coordination. Slowly, one by one, they began to fall back, retreating into the darkness of space. The ship's shields held strong and the weapons systems were relentless. Alex could feel the energy in the room shift as the tide of battle turned. The crew's panic had lessened, replaced by a quiet determination. They were fighting back. They were surviving. And they were doing it together. As the last of the enemy ships retreated, Alex felt a sense of relief wash over him. It wasn't over yet, but they had made it through the worst of it. The battle had been hard, but it had shown him something about himself that he hadn't known before. He wasn't just a crew member. He wasn't just following orders. He was a leader. He had faced fear, made tough choices, and fought to protect the people around him. And in doing so, he had proven something not just to the crew, but to himself. Kalara had been right. The test wasn't about strength or intelligence. It was about how he faced the challenges before him. It was about who he was when the pressure was on, when everything seemed impossible. And in that moment, Alex knew that he had passed the test. The crew around him let out a collective sigh of relief, and the captain turned to Alex, her face softening with gratitude. "Well done, Alex, you did it." Alex nodded, his breath still coming in short bursts. He was exhausted, but there was a sense of peace in his chest. He had done what needed to be done. He had proven himself, and for the first time he felt ready for whatever came next.